Well, I don't know about you all, but I feel incredibly inadequate right now. So happy to have Roz Savage with us. And I've seen this video before, and each time I'm almost moved to tears just by
me too.
by the willpower and the just crazy element of what you did. Some people have a midlife crisis and they get a sports car. Roz actually sold her sports car, lost her husband, and decided to row across an ocean.
When you say I lost my husband, he didn't die. Can we just clarify that?
Yes.
And I didn't just accidentally leave him in Marks and Spencer's. No, we split up. Yeah, there was a lot of clearing out going on at that point in my life.
So why?
Well, to cut a very long story very short, two really major things happened in my life around that time.
And you were how old?
I was sort of 33 when this process started. Early midlife crisis, interesting seeing some parallels with Cindy's story. And I realized that the life I was living wasn't really working for me. It all looked perfect on the outside, like you say, the little sports car, the great job, the perfect husband, if there is such a thing. But it just wasn't actually making me happy, which sounds terribly first world problem. But it really became quite a deep existential problem for me. It was like, why am I here? What's the purpose of my life? And so in an attempt to find an answer to that question, one day I did a self-help exercise that involved writing two versions of my own obituary, the one that I wanted and the one that I was heading for. And the one that I wanted didn't mention ocean rowing, but it was about living courageously. It was about getting out there and grabbing hold of life and just, having a big adventure of some sort.
And what was the other one?
The obituary I was heading for was very safe, very nice, but I realized that that wasn't what I wanted. And then the other thing that happened around that time was that I got green. I had an environmental awakening and became passionately concerned about what we're doing to the earth, the rate of deforestation, the plastic ending up in the oceans, the rise in carbon dioxide. And I thought, this is terrible. I have to do something about this. And I really took ownership of that problem and needed a platform to get people's attention. And it was around that time I happened to meet a guy who'd rowed across the Atlantic with his mother. And so I thought, if someone's mum can row across the ocean, how hard can it be?
How hard can it be?
Pretty bloody hard, as it turns out. But unfortunately, I didn't know that at the time, that I'd chosen a really, really bad year to row across the Atlantic, much rougher than normal, many more storms.
And this was 2007?
It was 2005 when I set out on the Atlantic. Yeah, that was my first and still the toughest, but also my favourite ocean.
So tell us about some of the things that went wrong. I think we got a little bit of a hint.
What didn't go wrong? Well, you saw the technical problems I was having. All four of my oars broke, which is not ideal when oars are the only way you're going to get to the other side.
There was no motor on this boat.
No, certainly not, nor a sail. I think maybe the toughest thing to lose was the stereo, though, because I had nothing then to distract me apart from my own thoughts. And even though I'm naturally an introvert, 103 days in my own company with nothing but my own thoughts for entertainment was pretty intense and really tough. I think that the human mind naturally goes in some quite dark places. And so it was a massive crash course in personal development. I learned a lot of things about how to cope with myself, how to manage my thoughts, really, how to manage my motivation. I learned a lot about what I'm good at, a number of things I'm really not good at, and just really learning self-acceptance.
And you have talked about this in the context of courage. And amazingly, Roz has said to me and has written that she doesn't consider herself to be a courageous person, which I find really hard to believe. But talk more about that. Why do you say that? And what does this mean for those of us who perhaps don't consider ourselves to be courageous, but might be motivated to do something else?
I think we can all be courageous. And looking at my journey, it was very much about seeing a problem and just going, I have to do something about this, really taking ownership and stepping up. And I really believe that courage is a learnable skill. And I work with my coaching clients now to tap into those deep resources of courage that I believe we all have within us and that we need to bring out into the world if we're really going to serve our purpose here on earth. And so I know a lot of people in this room have to be courageous on a daily basis to get up there and make it in what's still very much a man's world. In fact, I was thinking, adventure is very much a man's world, but at least I didn't have to actually come face to face with the men while I was in that world, which does make it considerably easier when your only adversary is the ocean. So I really believe that
There were some male fish, right?
Hard to tell the difference, quite frankly. So I do believe that now more than ever, we women need to step up and be our best and most courageous selves to create the change that we need in the world.
So Roz completed the Atlantic Ocean row, and then she did not declare victory. She decided to row the Pacific Ocean. And then she decided to row the Indian Ocean. She is, I believe, the only woman who has done a solo row of all 3 oceans.
Yeah, and damn it, I would have been the first person, except my Pacific row, the first attempt got aborted, and so as a consequence, a Turkish guy beat me to become the first person to solo row 3 oceans. But I'll take first woman.
I think that's pretty good.
Happy with that, yeah.
What, in your lowest, worst, most just isolated moments, how did you get through?
With great difficulty. Stubborn pride can get you a really long way. Logistically, it's also very difficult to quit in the middle of an ocean. You can't just catch the bus home. But actually, my mother really helped me one time, shortly before my satellite phone broke, severing all communication on the Atlantic. There was one day when I was really low. I just seemed to be going so slowly. I was so frustrated. I was also in a lot of pain. Just felt like I'd hit my limit on every single front. I just wanted out of there so badly. And it's one of only 2 times that I cried on the Atlantic. And my poor, long-suffering mother, she said, Rosalind, that's what she calls me, because it is my name, Rosalind, do you want to give up? And every fibre of my being was saying, yes, I want to give up. This sucks. And yet, a moment later, I knew that I would never forgive myself if I gave up, that this was too important to me and for everything that I believed in, and that the only thing worse than carrying on was to quit. But what Mum did for me was she reminded me that I had a choice. You know, I could have called for a passing ship to come and pick me up and take me to land.
Someone said you just call 911. Like, what happens if you're done?
It's called an emergency beacon with a red button on it that sometimes looked very tempting. But she gave me the choice because I'd felt so trapped. Even though I was in this beautiful, amazing wilderness, I was confined to that 23-foot boat, and I was trapped with myself on that boat. It was kind of like Life of Pi, but I was my own tiger. But she, by kind of opening a door for me and saying, look, you could get out of this if you want to just give up. You know, you've given it a really good try. No shame in this. But she allowed me to go, I have the strength, I can carry on. And so that was just one of the many wonderful gifts that my mum has given me.
I know you all have questions, but quickly, I would just love to hear what you are doing today.
Well, I've been doing a lot of motivational speaking during and since the ocean rowing years, and I loved it. I would get people coming up to me at the end of a talk saying, I'm feeling so inspired, and I very rarely got to find out what they were inspired to do or whether they actually did it. And so I've recently moved into coaching, particularly working with women in positions of influence.
And this is not coaching athletes, this is coaching business people.
That's right, and politicians.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, just drawing out that female Mother Nature type courage that I believe we really need in the world.
Is it hard to, from the perspective of your potential clients, to relate to you on some level? I mean, having done what you've done.
Yeah, but I'm so not scary. I'm 5'4", and I'm not naturally athletic at all. And so I would like to think that I'm just living proof that when you set your mind to something, you can really make it happen.
Who has a question? Here? Just wait for the mic, please, and identify yourself.
Thank you, Roz. My name is Lara, and I'm from Jordan. Just 2 questions. what made you go on the second and third trip? If there were moments of, desperation, you want to get off the boat. And the second question is for us, those who want to grab onto life and feel that they're in this routine and they want to get out of it, but they don't want to go to the Atlantic and cross the ocean. What should they do? Thank you.
I'll probably have forgotten the second question by the time I finish with the first one, but just feel free to remind me. I'd actually decided before I set out on the first ocean that I wanted to do all three. Originally, I'd wanted to row right the way around the world, and then I found out the winds and the currents don't really match up for rowers in a way that works. And so I downscaled it to only rowing across 3 oceans. And what got me, even though after I'd finished the Atlantic, it had been so hard that every time I thought about doing another ocean, it was like this icy hand gripped my heart, and I just felt this dread. I also knew that I just really had to do it, or else I would feel like I was wimping out. On the Atlantic, I really felt like I'd learned a lot about how not to row across an ocean, what kind of oars not to use, and so I really wanted to make that experience come good. And thirdly, on the Atlantic, I was so busy just trying to survive and stay vaguely sane that I felt like I hadn't really got to grips with my environmental mission yet, and there was so much work still to be done on that. And so, yeah, I was more than ready to head out again.
And advice for someone else?
Oh, yes. My advice would... I hate giving advice. But what worked for me, when I wrote those 2 versions of my own obituary, I think what it was really about was uncovering what my values were. And hence understanding why that job was not really working for me, because there was a real mismatch between my interpretation of the corporate values and my personal values. And so I think in answer to that sort of existential question about what am I here for, what's my purpose in life, it's to go back, really think hard about your values, and then, heck, yeah, imagine you're 80 years old and looking back and what would make you feel like it was really a life well lived.
Great advice. Another question? Wait for the mic. Here it comes.
Monique Morrow, Cisco. I'm very, very impressed and humbled by what you have done, so congratulations.
Thank you.
My question to you is more on the environmental side. I've had the pleasure of listening to Dame Ellen MacArthur. We're working with her on circular economy and what needs to be done from a development perspective. What do you think also needs to be done? You have women of influence in this room in terms of the environment itself.
To give the shortest possible answer to that, I kind of see our environmental challenges as being like this many-headed monster. I mean, yes, there's climate change, there's water, there's plastic in the oceans, there's plastic in landfill, there's deforestation. There are so many issues going on that it's like as soon as we cut one head off the monster, another one pops up. And so my belief is that what we really need to do is to change the thinking and underline that. I think so much of our environmental degradation is as a result of overconsumption by too many people. And I wouldn't mind so much if all that consumption was at least making us happy. But when you look around at rates of antidepressant taking and self-harming in teenagers, and you go, this is obviously not really working, people. So can we just take a step back and think about what really creates human happiness? And we don't have to keep buying so much stuff and just throwing it away. And so I think at one fell swoop, we could be happier and also dramatically increase our longevity as a species.
Very, very well said. Sorry, we're out of time. Thank you so much, Roz. It's an amazing journey.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.